Welcome, everyone. I'm excited to be facilitating this workshop with Karen Mariscal. And I just ask everyone, you'll have to accept the recording for folks that aren't able to make it today, who have signed up, who can watch it afterward. And I ask that if you have questions, please put those questions in the chat. That way, at the end, if time allows, we can make sure we get answers to you or follow up with you afterward if time doesn't permit, because we've got a lot of information. And I'm going to turn it over to Karen to kick it off, and I will mute myself. And I'm just really looking forward to learning from you as well. So thank you for being here, Karen.
Thank you, Kathleen. Appreciate it. Yeah, I'm a special needs estate planner and guardianship lawyer in Wellesley. And I have a son who is going to turn 30 in July. There's some people that aren't muted, and it's sort of a, could you mute them, Kathleen? Thank you. So that's Billy. He's, like I said, he's going to turn 30. So not that long ago, I've been through this whole process of obtaining SSI for Billy. He's autistic and intellectually disabled, and he lives in Framingham in a group home. He goes to a day program run by advocates. So he's mostly nonverbal, and he does a lot of volunteering, that kind of thing. So today we're going to talk about demystifying SSI and SSDI. And this is a very short amount of time to go through this. Kathleen, it's not advancing. I wonder, do I have the power to advance? Oh, here we go. Sorry, here we go. These are two very complicated programs, and I'm going to do my best in this short amount of time to give you an overview of what they are and how they work and how to apply for them, what they'll give you. Okay, but really it sort of takes, at least for me, it took me a lot more than one hearing to understand all of what I'm about to say. So try to be patient with yourself, hear it again, look it up, and eventually you'll understand everything. And also we'll have questions in the chat if you want to ask me questions. So SSI is Supplemental Security Income.
Karen, you're muted.
Somehow you're mute.
I think when she was trying to mute everybody, she hit me too. Can you hear me now? Well, we'll assume you can. Okay. So anyway, unfortunately, they have very similar names, SSI and SSDI. All right. So everybody gets confused, but they're really very different programs. Social Security Income is a welfare program for people who are poor. Social Security Disability Insurance is an insurance premium payment where it's entitlement when you pay into the system and you become disabled to get payments back. Okay, so the one thing they're different, they're both the same in that they both provide cash every month to help you live. And they both have the exact same medical determination, all right? So if your child has been determined to be disabled for SSI, they are disabled for SSDI. It's exact same criteria. Other than that, everything else is different. Now I'm going to start with SSI because SSI is more what you normally parents get when their child turns 18. For some reason, my slides are not moving. I don't know what's going on with that. So let me see if I can figure this out. Okay, SSI is more complicated. Like I said, it's for people that are poor, so your assets and your income matter. They don't matter with SSDI, so we'll get into that later. So there's more rules with SSI because of that, and I'm going to start with that. And what I was trying to say is when your child turns 18, your money is no longer their money. So they become qualified because they don't have money. So they're more likely to start with SSI than SSDI. So I'm starting with SSI to explain that. And it provides money to live. So do not apply for SSI until your child turns 18, because at that point is when they don't have the income and the assets, that they have the low enough income and assets to qualify. Before then, your money counts as their money, and you're going to immediately get denied even if you applied like one day before they're 18. But once you do qualify, I'm just giving you an idea of what your child's likely to get in this year. The full amount is $841 a month, plus a supplement of $114. The state gives a supplement because our state is more expensive to live in than other places. Now, it is reduced, and I'll talk about this, if the child is living in your home and you're paying their housing and their food, that check can be reduced by up to 1/3, no more than 1/3, all right? So if your child is living with you and you're unable to say that you can require their SSI check to cover your expenses, you're likely to get more like $650 a month. With SSI comes Mass Health automatically. You do not have to apply. You did not ask for it. So when you apply for SSI and you qualify, the Mass Health card comes in the mail. Remember that Mass Health is the payer of last resort, which means it's an excess insurer. So you might want to keep your child on your own insurance, because sometimes that insurance, like if with your employer, that might cover more things or be better insurance company for you, and have Mass Health as an excess. And usually these companies will keep our children on our insurance even after they're 26 if they're disabled. You have to prove it though. It doesn't happen automatically. You'll get a letter from them saying, okay, your child's about to come off the insurance because they're turning 26. And you say, wait a minute, let me show you and document the disability, and that the insurer will keep them on. Okay, so how do you qualify for SSI? There's 2 tests. You have to be medically disabled, and they have to have, as I mentioned, very little money. So the child cannot have more than $2,000 in assets, cannot have more than about $1,350 a month in income. So that's the first thing you want to look at when you are applying. You want to make sure before you apply that your child doesn't have more than $2,000 in their bank account or savings bonds, that kind of thing, and their income is low enough, because they love to disqualify us for that reason. Then they don't have to get into the more complicated issue of whether they're disabled. What does disabled mean? It's whether they can engage in substantial gainful activity, whether they can work for a living, okay, is what they're looking for. So translation, it's a work test. The maximum earnings now is, well, that should be 13. Let me see if I can fix that. 13. Well, no, I can't. That should be $1,350 a month. If a lot of our kids, when they turn 18, I say you apply now before they have any kind of work record, right? Because it'll make it more difficult. You want to apply as soon as they turn 18, even if you're not sure that the child might need it, apply anyway. And the test, if they're not already earning because they're still in high school or whatever, is whether they can make that kind of money. That should be $1,350. So the medical records in your application are very important. That's really how they determine if you're able to engage in substantial gainful employment activity. So you want to list all the relevant doctors and therapists that support this disability. And what the Social Security Administration will go directly to them and get the records. They won't go through you. They don't want to hear from you. They want to hear from the doctors themselves. However, you have the right to send in information if you think it could support your application. So if you have a recent, or even not a recent, but a good neuropsych that gives people an idea of the lack of the child's ability to work, I would go ahead and send it in, even though they don't ask for it. Also, sometimes on these and I'm only talking about borderline cases now, you might want to have a clinician or therapist write a letter to clarify what's going on and what they see in the child. That those sometimes can help. If your child has been working part-time, my standard is usually anybody working at minimum wage part-time can still qualify, all right? So that's sort of the break-even point. So once you're starting to work full-time minimum wage, you probably won't qualify. The other thing to do is if your child is working, you want to make sure you're clear on the application, the kind of support your child needs in order to do the job, including what you do. So if you have to wake the child up every morning to get them to work, do you have to drive them there? does the employer have to do special things to make sure that the person's successful at work? You want to add all of that up. And you also may even want the employer to write a letter explaining what's going on. Okay, now that's the disability piece. Now we're going to talk about the money piece. What counts in that 2,000? Anything in the bank account, checking account, including joint accounts. So if you have a joint account with your child that has 10,000 in it, all 10,000 is considered your child's. Savings bonds, so make sure you're aware of all the savings bonds because the government is. UTMA accounts at the age of 21, so not at first when you first apply, but later they count. And as I mentioned, before age 18, the parents' assets count. What doesn't count, any 529 plan is usually considered the owner is the parents of that. An ABLE account, which I hope people know about, is a special savings account called a 529A account for disabled people that you can save up to $16,000 a year. And it grows tax-free in this account, and it's not counted by the government as the child's money. So that's a great way to save for your child if you want to put some money away and not have it be in his name, but not have it counted. And then and by the way, Fidelity runs ours in our state, and it's free. So they don't have those annual fees that some of the states have if you are a Massachusetts resident. So just Google Fidelity ABLE account, and you'll see how to apply, how to open one up. And then a special needs trust, if you have one and it's funded, it will not count. If it's written right, it will not count as their money. So let's say you have a child, you're about to apply for SSI, and you didn't hear from me ahead of time, so you let the child have their own money. And let's say they have 10,000 in their checking account. What do? What you don't, well, I'll start with what you do. You spend it down is the best thing to do. If they need anything, it should be for them, obviously. You don't want to spend it on you. You can't spend it on you because you can't transfer it to someone else. So spend the money on the child. Let's say they need some kind of a car or something. You're allowed to have a car with this. Or you need to add a bathroom to your house or vacation or whatever. Or if you don't want to spend it, you can put it in the ABLE account, as I mentioned, which allows up to $16,000 per year into the account from any source. It can be your grandparents, it can be you, it can be your child, but it can only max out at $16,000 a year. Or if you have a decent amount of money, let's say you have $50,000 the child has, you don't want to really waste that by spending it down, or you can't put it into ABLE because it's more than $16,000. You can create a self-settled special needs trust for the child. But you probably need a lawyer to do that. What you can't do is transfer it over to your bank account or give it to anybody. That's giving it really, because there's a 3-year look back if you give the money away. So you want to make sure you've taken care of this issue before you apply. And if it takes you another year to spend down the money, wait a year until you apply. You want it to be less than $2,000 before you apply. So how do you apply? The Social Security Administration wants you to schedule an appointment with them to apply with them, but it's a lot easier, I think, just apply online yourself. So just go to you see that's ssa.gov. There's a lot of sites out there that want to help you that aren't .gov. You want to go to the .gov, okay? And go to their site and apply online. They have a code you can they give you, let's say A4352. Write it down, then because it takes a while to fill out the application. So you come back the next day and you put in that code and you go right to where you ended and all your work is saved. All right. And then, so once you hit that button of applying online or when you submit your application in person, that date is the date by which you'll get retroactive benefits. So you see, the sooner you apply, the better. Because let's say you apply today, March 23rd, it takes them 6 months to determine that your child is eligible. They pay retroactive benefits starting with March 23rd, all right? So usually once you apply, you'll get some follow-up phone calls. Often, depending on your situation, they'll want more information. They might ask for they will ask for a telephone interview, and they might ask even for an in-person interview with your child, with a therapist or something, depending on the situation, how much more follow-up you'll get. So once you do qualify, the money is managed by either your child themselves, if he or she is competent to do that, or you become one of the parents usually becomes their representative payee. And they don't use the guardianship process in this SSI, they use representative payees. So you apply to be the representative payee, you fill out the form, they agree, then you create, let's say I'm the rep payee for my son, Billy, then I would go create a joint account with Billy, and we both are on it, and that's where the direct deposit goes of the SSI check. Now, you may ask, what do I have to show the government what I do with that money? Well, if your child is living with you, you don't have to report and fill out anything. The government basically knows that you're going to spend at least that on your child per year if they're living with you. So you're not taking it for yourself or anything. Otherwise, there are annual representative payee reports that are very, very modest and easy to fill out. So they're not looking for a thorough spreadsheet of everything that's been spent out of that SSI at all. They want a general idea of what it was used for: clothing, food, entertainment, travel. So if you are, there's three things that can reduce the SSI check: food, shelter, and cash. So food and shelter, if you're paying for your child's food and shelter, okay, like many of us are who, when their kids live with us, the check will be reduced by up to 1/3. So it might not be reduced by 1/3 if you're paying less than that, but if depending on how much you're paying, but it cannot be reduced by more than 1/3. So if your child lives alone in a penthouse apartment and you're paying $10,000 a month, the SSI check will only be reduced by 1/3, and that's for only food and shelter that applies to. The other thing that could reduce it is cash. So you can't give your child cash. So generally, the best thing to do is your child should use their own SSI earnings for their cash, right? Cash needs, or they can use money from an ABLE account and it's never counted. They can use that and it's not considered income. And assuming they don't keep it, it's not an asset. So those are two ways our clients usually get cash when they need it. So, I was telling you about that joint bank account where the direct deposit goes every month. That goes, and if you're not spending that, pretty soon that's going to be over $2,000. You're disqualified from SSI. So you cannot let that go over $2,000. So how do you make sure you keep taking it out? And in my case, I created an automatic transfer into my own account to make sure that I was not negligent in forgetting that was growing, right? So you say, well, how come I can transfer to my account when it's his money? Because I'm paying for him. I'm paying for his housing and his food and all that stuff. So it's just a way to do it. And because I don't want to have to worry about it every month. How is it up to $2,000? It's just an easier way for me to handle it. I know other people I've heard sometimes transfer it directly into the ABLE account every month. So that's another way of doing it to make sure it doesn't go over $2,000, and then it saves for your child tax-free. Now, if your child is working, they have to report their wages every single month, because wages do decrease. I have a slide on this, but they do decrease your SSI check. So there's an app that allows you to report every month. It's supposed to be reported by the first 10 days of the next month. And then your SSI check for the next month will be decreased by the earnings. So here's the way it works. Basically, we want our people to work, right? We don't want to disincentivize somebody to go to work so they can keep all their SSI money. So we only reduce it by half. So, and also we give the first 20 is free, and then the next 65 is free. So after the first $85, whatever your child earns reduces their SSI check by 50%, okay? And if they're under age 22, they get special dispensation, and they really don't have it reduced much at all, because you can earn up to $2,000 a month or up to $8,230 a year and not have your check reduced. Okay, so let's say your child's on SSI and they earn enough money that they don't get a check because the 50% of 2,000 or let's say 3,000 is 1,500. That wipes out any check they would have had. And that keeps happening. All right. You still have the Mass Health coverage. You're not going to have the SSI check anymore, but Mass Health is not going to go away. And a lot of people worry about that. Mass Health can be very important. So, and again, we want our people to work. You stay on Mass Health. If you did qualify for SSI once, you stay on Mass Health. If you make enough, you might have to pay a premium. And it's still the same exact insurance coverage. It's called Common Health instead of Mass Health, but you might have to pay a premium if you make enough monthly earnings. And as I mentioned, you cannot give your child cash without having reduced dollar for dollar after that first $20 exemption. But you can pay for other things. You can pay for anything you want as long as it doesn't give your child cash. So if you want to buy them a plane ticket or whatever, you pay a third-party vendor, that is fine. So I mentioned use your SSI money, and there's also a prepaid debit card called TrueLink, which is terrific. It's a company that has like, you go online, you have the dashboard of where they can use the money and how much money they get a month, and you set it all up so that the kids that are high enough functioning to have their own money and spend their own money can have some freedom there and learn how to use money with their debit card, but have a little control over it. So like I said, if you want to pay for someone on SSI, you want to pay other things for them, not to them directly, but to vendors, like pay for their phone bill every month, pay for their clothing, whatever, that's fine. It's just a matter of paying. You can't give the money to the child directly. I know that's crazy, but that's how it works. Okay, Kathleen, I think I'll stop for a second and see if there's any questions on SSI before we go on to the SSDI part of this.
Sure. Let me close out here. We did have a few questions and you may have covered this. Let me go back. Speaking about ABLE accounts. So somebody was asking, so I don't know if we can apply for premium assistance for the Mass Health once the 18-year-old qualifies for SSI.
Yeah.
Let's see. What is UTMA?
Oh, UTMA is it's the way to give money to a minor. There's another Unified Transfer to Minors Act. So it's just it's a way of having an account for a minor, and they automatically get to own it at age 22 in our state, or maybe it's 21.
Okay, there were questions about the ABLE account, if it's utilizing it for education, or is there any downfall or negatives to the an ABLE account?
So, briefly, because again, ABLE could be another hour. People get all excited about what you can use ABLE account for. You can use it for anything. It's the only issue is there's qualified disability expenses, QDEs, are very broad, but you're supposed to use them for qualified disability expenses if you want that tax-free earning, all right? Otherwise, you have to pay taxes on your earnings of your account. But generally, a lot of our accounts don't have much earnings. So I don't care about that QDE, but if you do care about QDE, it's so broad. It's definitely education. Anything your kid needs is really kind of considered connected to their disability. So the government's not trying to be careful about this. They want you to be able to use it for your child. So assuming you're using it for your child, you're generally fine.
Okay. Some of these other questions you've kind of touched on, but I noticed that Christine has her hand up, and I'm assuming that means it's a question relative to something, a clarification of something that you've gone over. Are you able to unmute Christine to quickly ask your question?
Yeah, hi, sorry, I just typed it out, but I can ask it as well. Just to clarify, my 30-year-old daughter lives at home. She doesn't pay any rent because she doesn't have any money to pay rent. So if she got approved for SSI, they would take 1/3 of her check?
Yeah, unless you could there are ways that that you can get around that if you can show that you're using her share of your housing and food is less than the SSI check. So you're taking it and you're charging her rent. They allow you to show that, and then they won't take 1/3. But usually they will, you know, if you're taking care of her and she's living with you, usually they decrease it by 1/3.
Well, could I start charging her rent once she gets her check?
Yes. But it has to be the right proportion. You can't just, let's say you're spending $2,500 a month on your house with your mortgage and your food and all, and you'd want to charge her $700, and she only lives there with you, right? That won't work. It has to be the right proportion of her fair share, they call it.
Oh, what share is there?
Again, if you're there with her, 2 people, it has to be half.
Oh.
But you can talk to Social Security about this once you qualify.
Okay.
And then if quickly, maybe Kathleen, Ryan, if you could unmute and ask your question, and then we can move on to.
Yeah, I did put my question in the chat, and it is, when you open an account after you get an SSI, and does it have to be named any special way? For example, your name in trust for your child's name?
It's just a joint account.
So it just has to be a joint account. It doesn't have
Yeah.
to say in trust for.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So now let's talk about Social Security Disability Insurance, which is really a very, very different program. And I'm going to start by talking about your child getting SSDI off their own earnings. Okay, so there's 2 different ways you can get it. You have to pay into the system with Social Security taxes in order to qualify for Social Security Disability Insurance. That your child can pay in by working, or you pay in, and when you start collecting your Social Security, your child gets the benefit. Okay, so those are the 2 different ways. And I'm going to start by talking about the first one. And like I say, SSDI is a much better program to be on because there's no asset or income limit. Nobody cares about cash or food or housing or any of that stuff, or the 2,000 limit. It's an entitlement. If you've been paying towards Social Security, you're entitled to that. And your child is disabled, they're entitled to this. All right. So let's talk again, but let's say your child has been working for a few years. They need a certain number of credits in order to start getting their SSDI check. But again, if they've been determined to be disabled, same determination as SSI, and they pay into the system, they can get a monthly payment from SSDI once they have the right amount of credits. Now, it's not going to be a very big check because they haven't worked very long, right? But, and it will not be as much as their SSI payment. So let's say they're getting $850 a month in SSI, and they get $200 a month in SSDI. Why bother? Because it comes with Medicare after 24 months, after 2 years of receiving SSDI, you get Medicare. So that's a great benefit to have. So people that are working a little and have enough credits, I do recommend they apply for SSDI in addition to SSI. So let's say, again, if you have your SSI's check is $850 and your SSDI check is $200, your SSI check is going to go down. So you're still going to end up, well, let's say it'll be $650 for SSI. It'll still be the same amount of money every month until your SSDI goes higher than your SSI, and then SSI goes away and you're only getting SSDI. It's a different program in that if you have SSDI and you're working, your check is not decreased by your earnings like it is with SSI. You still have to report your employment, and what happens with SSDI is that it ends entirely if it turns out that you're earning substantial gainful employment. But they do, again, they want you to work. They want you to give it a try. They don't want you to be afraid to try working because you're going to fall off your benefits and then it's going to be a disaster and you're going to be with nothing, right? They don't want that. So they give you a trial period of 9 months to give it a try and get your full amount of your check all those 9 months, not touched at all. Then if they give you another extended period of eligibility for another 36 months to see how things go. But if you are at that point earning substantial gainful employment, which is again is $13.50 a month, you're going to drop off of it entirely. So you're not going to have SSDI anymore. But at least you got to these months to try it out to make sure you thought you could work and you could keep going with it. Now, if something were to happen in a few years, you can apply all over again. But as I said, SSDI comes with Medicare after 2 years, which is a great benefit. Now let's talk about the other way to get SSDI, which is called the Disabled Adult Child or DAC program. This is for children who were disabled before the age of 22, so it's limited that way, whose parents are collecting Social Security, all right? So you have been paying these Social Security taxes all these years, not even knowing that you were paying this insurance premium in case you had to retire, stop working, and you still had a dependent disabled child to take care of. It takes over. So what is their amount? It's 50% of your check while you're alive. So let's say I get $3,000 a month from Social Security once I start collecting. So you can't wait and get it even though you're waiting. You have to actually collect. If I'm collecting $30,000 a month, Billy or whoever will be getting $1,500 a month, okay, in addition to my check. Once I pass away, he'll get 75% of whatever I was collecting. So I do encourage you to try to wait till you're 66, your full employment year, because that'll be a bigger check for your child for the rest of their lives. Okay, it will not go up further if you wait till you're 70 and a half. It will still be stuck at that amount of 66. But some people do the math and they say, you know, I'd be better off collecting at 62 and my child will get that increase then, even though my check will be less, right? And also, if you are married or if your child has a father or mother alive that starts collecting later, that makes more of an SSA check, it'll jump to that person's 50%, the higher earners of the two parents. And if your parent hasn't been involved in your life and you don't hardly know who they are, as long as you have their Social Security number and you know they are biologically the parent, their earnings will work. It's a great program because there's no asset or income limits. Like I said, it's an entitlement and it lasts forever unless they start working again. Like I mentioned, if you start working too much, you're not disabled anymore. Other than that, so my son Billy will be getting his, once I start collecting, he'll be getting that SSDI check for the rest of his life, which really helps your peace of mind to know that that's going to come in. You have to pay it into the system. So there's some people that didn't work where they had Social Security taxes taken out, they're not going to qualify for this. And again, if your child wasn't disabled before 22, you're not going to qualify. So another reason why I encourage people who have younger 18, 19-year-old children to apply for SSI then. So we establish they're disabled back then so that we don't have any problem with SSDI when it comes time for that. And this is just a quick chart to show the different sort of things that you can think about. SSI, that's what you start with when 18. So you have to have less than 2,000 and you have to worry about their income and cash. Then it turns into SSDI, hopefully when you start collecting. And then able accounts another way of saving for them. And then, as I mentioned, SSI comes with Mass Health. SSDI comes with Medicare after 2 years. And then this housing is another way of saving for your child and preparing for the future. Okay, so that's pretty much my overview. I can take more questions now.
Great, thank you. So much information. There are some more questions. Is there a minimum age for SSI? You went over that at the beginning, but.
Well, I mean, no, because if your family has less than 2,000 or 3,000 in assets, if it's a couple, you can get SSI as a child, but your family's resources count towards your resources until you're 18. All right. So most of us aren't going to have our kids qualify for SSI until they turn 18, and then our money isn't considered their money.
Got it. Let's see. I am a legal guardian for my grandson who is 18 and I get Social Security. Can I qualify as a parent?
For SSI, I guess that's a question, right? No one in the Social Security cares about guardianship. So people always ask me, oh, I'm not the guardian yet, so I better not apply for SSI, or I'm the guardian, can I get this? They don't recognize the system at all. They just use rep pays, all right? So a guardian is the only way you qualify for SSI is if you have less than $2,000 and low income. All right, so it doesn't matter if you're the guardian or not.
Once they collect SSDI, when the parents are receiving SSI, do they qualify for Medicare?
SSDI comes with Medicare after receiving it for 2 years. Is that the question?
Know if Jean, if you're able to unmute to clarify a little bit more.
Yeah, thanks. The question is, so if my husband or myself qualify for Social Security and we have a disabled son who is currently on SSI, it switches to SSDI.
Yes.
And then after 2 years of being on SSDI, he would also qualify for Medicare?
You're listening. You get an A.
Okay.
That's all
Okay.
right. Now
Yeah,
you might ask me, does it happen automatically?
yes.
And it used to happen automatically. When we started collecting, automatically our kids' checks would increase. And we're like, whoa, you didn't even know why, because they switched to the SSDI program. Lately, I've been hearing you have to let them know. You say, hey, I'm collecting now and I have this disabled kid. Make sure that they get the increase in their check as well. The other thing I'd like to mention, a lot of people don't even know whether their child is receiving SSI or SSDI because unfortunately our letters from Social Security are not very clear about that. And when you first apply, they often send you pretty quickly a denial. You're denied, you're not going to qualify. And it's a denial for SSDI. Okay, so don't get excited. You're not denied for SSI right away. You're denied for SSDI. You probably didn't even know you applied for it, all right? But it panics everybody. So just be aware, if you apply and you get a denial, it could be just because, depending on what the letter says, but it could be just that you don't qualify for SSDI yet. You don't have a parent collecting. You haven't had the credits to get it on your own. So you're just waiting for your SSI determination.
Thank you. Would you be able to review a situation in which collecting at 62 might be beneficial for your disabled child?
You know, there's a whole computer program called Maximize My Social Security that runs the numbers for you. But that program is kind of expensive and financial planners have it, but I don't. But you put on, you figure out what's the increase my son's going to have or daughter if I start collecting at 62, and then run it out to what less am I going to get if I live a certain amount of age, right? And let's say your spouse starts collecting at 70, or well, let's say 66. So now your kid's check goes up for the rest of their lives to your spouse, off your spouse's earnings, right? So all these sort of variables get put into, and you think about what would be best for my family and for me, whether I should start collecting earlier or not.
We have a question from Lucy. Will you discuss individuals who are duly eligible for Medicaid and Medicare, I said that backwards, who are served by a Medicaid waiver, who collect SSDI, having to keep the funds under the $2,000 threshold?
So the question is, when you're dual eligible, right? Dual eligibles are great because you have both Mass Health and Medicare. That's a great thing to have. But when you're on a DDS waiver, you have to keep your assets under 2,000. Even though I'm telling you that when you have SSDI, you don't have to worry about it anymore, right? So that's the one exception where you do have to worry about it. You have to keep, as if you're just on SSI, you have to keep your assets below 2,000 in order to keep that waiver program. We have like 4 different waivers in our state. One of them is about housing, if you're living in a group home. So unfortunately, you still will have to worry about your limits of your assets then.
Thank you. Went over that. Is it necessary? Okay, so second question, is it necessary to report amount of money in ABLE account to Social Security?
They often ask a lot of questions that they really have no business asking, because it's none of their business whether you have money in the ABLE or not, but they ask. So I just give it to them. What's the harm? They can't until it reaches 100,000. So if your ABLE account goes over 100,000, it counts again. All right. So I guess they would say that's one reason they might ask, is because they want to make sure it's below 100. But just so you know, my general attitude is just tell them what they want to know. Okay. Even though it's not you don't think that, they want to know about your special needs trust and what's in it and that kind of thing. They want a copy of the trust. It's infuriating because that's not countable. Just give it to them. Because if you start to fight it, then things go sideways.
Thank you. If my child is high functioning autism and is in a training program or headed to college, does he qualify for SSDI?
Well, I think that person means SSI because they,
yeah,
or maybe, I don't know. The real question there is that child going to pass the being disabled test, right? And that kid is a real borderline. So those are the people that are hard. They usually need interviews and they need more you want to give any documentation you can, because they're headed to college. At this point in their lives, the government might think that they're going to be able to have a full-time or a substantial gainful employment, right? So that's the question there on that one. And if I were that parent, I would apply. Absolutely. And see what you come up with. And, the other issue is you don't want your child to think that you think they're disabled or that they need this. They're headed to college. They're going to have an independent life, right? So you just tell them, you've been told by a lawyer, it's just better protection to apply now, even if it doesn't work. And even if you don't need it, because it's just a very valuable thing, could be needed, easier to get now when you don't have any earnings record.
Perfect. There's a question in the chat. Where did it go? Are these programs available to non-citizen families, many of whom work and pay taxes?
I don't know. I think if you're paying in the system, you're entitled, but I'd have to look that up.
And Jean saying, going back to my question, the parent collecting SSI at 66, my son then collects SSDI and qualifies for Medicare. After 2 years, is he also able to keep Mass Health as the secondary coverage?
Yes, and that's important for everybody to understand. Once you start on Medicare with SSDI, you also retain your Mass Health. You're dual eligible at that point.
Perfect. And at this point, if it's okay, I'm going to stop the recording. I know some folks might want to ask a question, and we only have, and I know a few hands are up. So if I'm going to stop the recording at this point, but then continue in terms of if anyone has any questions I just didn't want to ask online, if that's
Thanks,
okay.
everyone.
Hold on one second.